Again, good afternoon to everyone. First order of business would be to have roll call. Commissioner DeMont Davis.
Present.
Commissioner Sana Gregory.
Present.
Commissioner Gail Hambert.
Present.
Commissioner Felicia Franklin Warner. Okay, Commissioner Franklin Warner show is not present. And before we go to our first presentation for this evening, I need to remind everybody that Census 2020 is still ongoing. It's crucial, it's critical, it is imperative that everybody gets out and be counted. As of today, only 59.1% of Clayton County residents have responded to the 2020 census survey. This is definitely low. We can do a whole lot better. But with your help, we can make it 100% participation. Please take a few minutes to complete the 2020 census online. You can go to www.my2020census.gov. That's www.my2020census.gov on your smartphone, tablet, or iPad. You can also complete it by mail or by phone. By taking the census, we'll secure 10 years of funding for our schools, health care, and programs like job assistance and youth activities. This equates to approximately $2,300 per person per year for all 299,000 residents, roughly $6.89 billion over the next 10-year period. That's a lot of money. We can definitely utilize that money and put it to good use here in Clayton County. The census ends in 8 days on September 30th. Please, please, take it today and secure the $6.89 billion future of Clayton County. Again, go to www.my2020census.gov. This is our money. We just have to go get it and make sure to tell your neighbors, your family, everybody to be counted. Everyone counts. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garber. All right, first presentation of the night is going to be conducted by Ms. Ambles.
Chairman, I'm here. This is Commissioner Felicia Franklin Warren. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Please let the minutes reflect Commissioner Warren is present.
And I've been here for 5 minutes or so. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay. Ms. Ambles.
Good evening, everyone. I can't believe that it's that time of year again. Benefits coming up. And I do want to thank the board for the opportunity to present this afternoon. The purpose of my presentation is to introduce the proposed 2021 benefits mix. The item will be listed on the agenda for the October 6th board meeting and will be presented in more detail by our broker and consultant. But tonight, well, this evening is just an introduction of what's to come. I'm ready to go, Ms. Jamie. Okay. Once again, the purpose of the presentation is just an introduction of the 2020 benefits mix. The agenda, we'll talk about the replacement of our broker, some administrative changes we have made, a benefits timeline, renewal timeline, look at the 2021 benefits mix, and there's a special consideration that I would like to make the board aware of in regards to the Hartford. I'm here as well as Assistant Manager Angela Jolly. Ms. Jolly is the Assistant Manager of the Benefits Administration Division. One of the major changes that we have had is we replaced our broker. I would like to take this time to thank Epic for the work that they have done for Clayton County, and we appreciate their commitment to assist with our transition to the new broker, as well as transitioning to a new broker. We're also transitioning to a new benefits administration system. So right now we do have a lot that's going on in benefits administration. Marsh and McClellan Agency is the new benefits broker and consultant for Clayton County. Services were procured in alignment with Clayton County's RFP process. The Clayton County team consists of Jack Thompson, CLU Vice President, Maureen Rosen, Marilyn Cameron, as well as Jessica Brown, Director of Health and Wellbeing. The board will definitely have an opportunity to meet the new Clayton County team at the October 6th board meeting. And I'm gonna be very brief, you all. In regards to some administrative changes, I want to share some of those with you. I sent over an email earlier today. I know you all have a very busy schedule. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that email, but there's a handout regarding some of the administrative changes that we have made. The first change, and Miss Angela, if you don't mind, if I forget something or need to touch on something, please let me know, okay? Thank you, ma'am. The benefits waiting period for new hires, rehires, and part-time to full-time employees. It's gonna, the effective date is going to be the first day of the month following 60 days of continuous employment. Previously, the 60 days was actually from the date of hire, and we are in ACA guidelines by making it the first day of the month following 60 consecutive days of employment. One of the things that does is it put everyone on the first of the month schedule. Right now we have dates all over the place, and this will put everybody right there together. This one is very important. Our benefits end date is going to be the termination date. The day that the employee actually terminates Clayton County is going to be the termination date. Previously, it depended on what day of the month.
There's protocol. It's a good.
I'm sorry?
No, if the commissioners would just place your phones on mute until we get to the Q&A.
Okay, terminate the end of the month. Okay, thank you, Angela. Okay, I'm sorry, commissioners. The benefit end of the end date for the benefits when an employee terminates is going to be the end of the month. Currently, previously, it depended on the day the employee actually terminated. If you terminated between the first of the month and the 15th, then your coverage would end the end of the month. But if you terminated the 16th through the 30th, the coverage would terminate the end of the following month. So what we were doing in essence is we were actually continuing to insure employees even after they left Clayton County, which presented us with the probability of extra claims and so forth. So we wanted to clean that up. Premium deductions will be evenly divided among 24 pay periods. Previously, deductions for various products were taken out at different times. We have two. We're paid twice a month, well, every 2 weeks. And so typically, we would take out certain benefits one part of the month, the other benefits the latter part of the month. So what we're going to do is we're going to equally divide the amount over 24 pay periods. Now, we had looked at 26, but when you did the math, the 26 just wasn't enough to take away the 2 free pay periods that the employees have. We look forward to those 2 free pay periods in which no benefits are deducted. So we just decided to stick with the 24. See what else I want to say on that. Colonial critical illness tiers, we have changed the tiers from 5,000 to 50,000. They are now 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Now that's going to only impact new employees coming in. Employees who are current employees, this will have no impact on them at all. But new employees coming in, we're doing 10, 20, and 30. We streamlined it to that point to offer, to enhance the benefits and offer, to try to offer a little bit more. 5,000 wasn't a whole lot. When we looked at the premium and the offering the 10,000, we're trying to streamline it as well as get the biggest bang for the bucks for the employees. Our COBRA administration, we have transitioned from CAS to MedCom. We ended our contract with CAS and we extended the contract we had with MedCom to include COBRA administration. My team and I had talked about bringing COBRA administration back in-house. Years and years and years ago, COBRA administration was in-house, but our consultants advised against that because there are so many different moving parts with COBRA, and it has a lot of compliance-related issues. So we decided to just have MedCom to administer that for us, and we're expecting a better experience with MedCom than we did with than we had with CAS. Yeah, 24 pay periods, not 24 months, you all. I apologize. I was working on this last night, but 24 pay periods. Marsh and McClellan has definitely hit the ground running, and they have engaged in several initiatives to identify savings for Clayton County. In the email I sent to you all today, you had a handout that kind of highlights those particular initiatives. I will say that the first two initiatives are direct savings more so for the employees, and when I get to the Hartford screen, I'll share that a little bit more with you all in regards to that. The other savings center on our stop loss claims as well as pharmacy rebates and our wellness technology. I think that we're off to a good start in identifying different savings for the county, and we definitely want to keep that up. But once again, I did send over the handout with the email today. Behind the scene, a lot goes on to successfully transition from one benefit year to another. And to complicate the process, renewals require quotes. And underwriters do not want to sign off on anything too soon. They want to make sure that they get the most current data in which to project cost. Now, this quagmire puts the renewal process in a very time-sensitive, time-driven mode, and I wanted to share with the board the timeline of what has to happen to support the transition. This should be 9/22 when I'm making an introduction to the board. Ms. Jamie, you can go back for me. 10/6, we have it as an agenda item. 10/9 to 10/13, we're going to have to send communications to the members. There's a component that requires system readiness, because whatever the board approves, we've got to get those rates loaded in the system so that the system would work as it should. We have open enrollment for active and retirees. There's validation and corrections, data corrections of the enrollment data. In regards to our retirees, there is a pension transmittal for the first payment that has to go out on November 16th. We have the holidays in there because they can come in and kind of set things back a little bit. The first payroll deduction for the active employees will be pay period ending 11/27, and 11/27 to 1/1 is just going to be ongoing administrative support. behind the scenes, making sure that we answer all questions, get the appropriate documents to the employees, such as their new ID cards and so forth. So I wanted to share this with the board. Oftentimes I feel like I'm behind the curve when I'm bringing the information to you all, but that has a lot to do with the fact that the underwriters will not too much sign off on anything until they get all the current data. When we get to the Hartford, I'll share with you that we are still waiting for data from the Hartford. And Angela, we meet on Thursday, right? Okay. And we meet on Thursday, and we should have that data in hand. I'm gonna dive into the benefit mix, and I'll look at them, I'll be brief, but I'll look at them one at a time. What you see here is Delta Dental. The DHMO, fully insured, we introduced that particular product for this year. This is the first year that we've had it. There is no rate increase for this. We are moving from a 3-tier structure to a 4-tier model. We have 278 employees enrolled, a total of 550 members. The cost is $90,686 to renew. We still have the 72-28 contribution split in place. So the projected cost for the county for this particular product is $65,294. We also have under Delta Dental our PPO, which is self-funded. There is no increase in the administrative services rate. There will be a slight increase to ensure adequate funding for this product. We are moving from a 3-tier structure to a 4-tier model. We currently have 2,273 employees enrolled in this product for a total of 4,465 members. The cost is $1.6 million. At the 72-28 split, the county portion is $1.2 million. The next benefit is IMED. This is a fully insured product. We have over 1,800 employees enrolled. It is 100% employee paid. There is no rate or benefit design changed, but once again, the county cost, the cost that you see up there, $230,000, that's the employee cost. The county does not contribute to this particular benefit. The next one we have is Colonial Life. Colonial Life, Colonial consists of 3 group plans: accident, hospital indemnity, critical illness. There is no change in rate or benefit design. However, I said earlier that we will be offering the 10, 20, 30 to new employees. Our current employees, no change if they decide to keep what they have now. We also have the gunshot wound, whole life, individual life, critical care. There's no change in those products, and this is employee contributions only. The county does not contribute to this particular product. Next, we have Kaiser Medical. The proposed rate of increase for Kaiser, 17.7% due to loss ratio. However, Marsh was able to negotiate a 9% renewal for us. Marsh's actuaries actually confirmed the reasonableness of this particular renewal. The projected cost is right at $13,415,000. Now there's an option that that we are recommending, a slight proposed change in the plan design. I will say that our plans have not gone through a plan design in quite a while. And I know that employees, you know, and just like everywhere else, people talk about how expensive insurance is, and they're right, it actually is. But you cannot judge the quality of a plan by looking at cost alone. And one of the things that HR is in conversation with the consultants is that we actually offer a very rich plan. The deductible, $500 deductibles, you're not going to see that too much anywhere else. As I said, I think it's been, did we say about 10 years, Angela, that we've had a plan design change. Well, we're recommending a plan design change on these low-touch components of the plan. We are requesting to increase the deductible from $500 to $750, the out-of-pocket max from $2,500 to $3,000, the ER copay from $200 to $300, and we're hoping that that increase will steer some employees from making unnecessary trips to the emergency room and using urgent care, which is a lot cheaper. If we go the route of the proposed change, now we're looking at a 6.2% increase versus a 9%. And the projected cost is for the projected cost in general is a little bit over $13 million. At the 72-28 contribution split, the projected for the county would be $9.4 million. The proposed savings to go that way, to make those small plan design change, is estimated to be right at $344,000. Thank you, Jamie. Next up, we have Anthem Medical. This is a self-funded plan. There is no rate change for the ASO component. There is a proposed 8.1% rate increase, a projected cost of $12.4 million. At the 72-28 split, the cost for the county would be $8.9 million. I want to go back real quickly. I promise it won't take long, to Delta Dental. We said earlier that there will be a slight increase in order to ensure the adequate funding level. One of the reasons for that is in the COVID environment, there has not been a lot of claims for the dental. People just have not, and understandable, have not been going to their dentists and so forth as they normally would, so claims have been down. We expect that to change in the upcoming plan year, so we wanted to ensure adequate funding for this particular product. Next up, we have Kaiser Medicare. Kaiser Medicare is a fully insured product. We have 331 members. No change in the rate or benefit design. The projected cost is $650,024. 72-28 split would be $468,000, a little bit over for the county. Next up, we have the Aetna Medicare. This is a fully insured product. We have 440 members enrolled in the Aetna Medicare. There is a proposed 15.8% rate. 11% of that 15% represents the appeal of the health insurance tax. They are adding some benefits add-ons such as acupuncture as well as telehealth. The projected cost for this is $1.2 million. 72-28 split, the county portion $933,000 and some change. I want to be totally transparent with the board. There was an offer from Aetna Medicare. It would have mirrored the Aetna. Well, from Anthem, I'm sorry, there was an offer from Anthem to replace Aetna. They would mirror what we have here with Aetna, but the cost would have been $1.3 million. And at this point, I didn't feel comfortable bringing that to the board, but I did want to be transparent that that was a part of the process. The last slide that I want to talk about is the Hartford special consideration. The Hartford is the only product we have with a July renewal, and that's about to change because every single product we have will be on the January 1st renewal. Hartford cited us a 97% increase on our basic life, a 35% increase on our LTD, and a 40% decrease on our STD. And they are attributing that to the claim ratio. It appears that claims have been running very poorly with the Hartford since 2017. 148% in 2017, 155% 2018, 187% in 2019, and our retirees are also within this particular, the basic life product, and we have had several deaths and so forth and have had to file several claims. What we did is Marsh negotiated a 3-month renewal deferral, and I praise them for that, as well as Hartford, because during this 3-month deferral, they made no changes to the employees, to the premiums. HR Benefits Administration and Marsh engaged in detailed audits, because when we have that type of a 97% rate increase, that's astronomical. So we did engage detailed audits to try to make sure that everything was in place. As a result of that, Marsh negotiated a 4-month renewal, September through December, with basic life at 57% instead of the 97%, and there is no rate increase on the STD, LTD, or any other the voluntary products that Hartford offers. Now, what we are requesting from the board is that the county absorbs the $50,000. And it wouldn't be an impact to the general fund, because due to some cost savings initiatives as well as some other things, HR has the money within our budget to absorb this cost. The reason I'm asking is because I don't want the employees to be hit with this, you know, right now where we are with the plan year. Also, it could have an impact on our technology transition to SmartBand. The rates would have to be built into the system. There's a lot, and I'm not a technology person. Miss Jamie's sitting here, and she can tell you how intense we all have been working on the transition to SmartBand. And Jamie, I appreciate all the work that you and your team have done with that, because it's a lot. So that's the main one. Those are the two main reasons I'm asking to be able to absorb this. And as I said, there should be no impact to the general fund, because the money is in HR's budget. We're able to do that. There are some future initiatives, and they're not on the slide, that I would like to share with the board. We are going to move forward to establish our benefits committee, and that's going to consist of active employees as well as retirees. We have already engaged in analysis of self-funding versus fully insured, and we have the initial review. We're going to be taking a look at that and sharing with the board the recommendation on that. We will be doing a detailed overall plan review. As I said earlier, we have not had a plan design change in over 10 years, except for what I'm presenting to the board now. So we will be taking a look at that, just to make sure that the benefits are fresh, that they are modern, that they are timely. Another thing that I said that's important to me is that you definitely cannot judge the quality of a plan based on premiums alone. So we also want to, I've asked our consultants to do a deep benefits analysis of the surrounding counties, and Angela, they have provided some preliminary information to us, but we want to dive a little deeper into that. And lastly, I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to present.
All right, thank you for all the work that you and your team have put into trying to get the very best rates. It's always about our employees, so thank you for caring. Any questions for Ms. Ambles?
Yes, I have a question, Ms. Ambles.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Hambrick.
Yes, are we making any drastic changes to the retirees plan like we did before?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. What we have in place is Kaiser, and there is no change with Kaiser. Everything is gonna stay the same, and as I said earlier, we do have our Aetna piece. My recommendation is to keep that. There was an offer on the table by Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, as a replacement for Aetna, but I think that we're in a pretty good position where we currently are with that. So no ma'am, no changes to the retirees.
And
Thank you.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Ambrose.
You're welcome, Commissioner.
What is the rate change for the new benefit year, and the new benefit year for the Hartford?
They will, in regards to the renewal, you're asking about the renewal, the 2021, Chairman?
2021, yes.
2021, we are meeting with the consultants on Thursday, so we should have that information. As I said earlier, these underwriters, they do not want to release the quotes without the very latest current data that they can get. I always feel like I'm just bringing this to you all in a rush mode, but that's partially why I can't ask for this data in July, because I won't get it. They're waiting to give us the very last, they're just waiting to make those projections based on the most current data that they can get their hands on.
Gotcha.
I have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
No, you go, please.
You keep talking about the fact that they need to get the most current data. Have you submitted the information over to the carriers as well as to the brokers?
We started this process, Commissioner Warner, we started this process, Angela.
Let me ask you a question again. Have you submitted the information over to them? Not when you started the process. Has the information been submitted to the carriers and to the broker? And that means our current data as of today's date. Has that been submitted?
The data was submitted when we started the process. And yes, so to answer your question, yes, ma'am, the data has been submitted. They have it, and they're working on it.
Because honestly, I hear you keep making that preference, but it doesn't take that long. The bottom line is, when you're working with government, you're not working with a industry that has a lot of turnover. People come work for government for the stability purposes. So there's not going to be a lot of changes between now and later. So I heard you preference that, but the bottom line is, if you've submitted that data to them, then they would be able to at least get you some information that we would be able to take, analyze, and be able to make a decision on. Also, in making sure that that information that you submitted is accurate as possible. That's the key. As long as your downloads are accurate, you should be able to get that information. There should not be an issue with that.
One of the things, Commissioner, that they are looking at is claims data. And you being in the industry, I'm sure that you are aware that the claims data is not always the most current data, because you have claims that have been incurred, but claims that have not been paid. So from my understanding and my experience, there are a multitude of different things that they're looking for, and that claims data is going to be the most important, because the majority of the cost is going to be based on our experience rating, which means how our claims actually ran. So
you're actually right, but even with the claims data, again, you're looking at not a high turnover rate. The claims are there. There are going to be some things that come up that are not expected, but we're going to be, I mean, those in the industry would be able to project what that would be. I just don't want us to be making a decision because, oh, we're going to get something wild and crazy at a later date. The whole thing we need to keep in mind is making sure that we respond in the appropriate amount of time, that the data that we submit is accurate, and then we would be able to, any actuary would be able to project whatever that cost is moving forward. The projections would be able to be made, because government is one of the most stable industries. So I just wanted to make that, because I heard you making that statement. But go ahead, that is great information.
Yes, ma'am, and you're absolutely right. I guess you are referring to stability in regards to the turnover rate, but it's not so much as the turnover rate that they're looking at. They're looking more at that experience rate, which is going to account for the majority of your claims.
I don't want to go back and forth with you, but even that is projected. Thank you so very much. Have a good day. Okay.
But just for my edification, you have sent everything that's needed to the actuaries.
Yes, sir.
They have everything that they need, and
Yes,
we're
sir.
waiting on them.
They do. We started, when did we start this process, Angela? Back in June, if I'm not mistaken, May or June.
Okay.
The only other thing I want to say is, when we do roll out the meetings, make sure that you have all your data to be able to provide to employees, so that they can make a conscious decision. I think in the past, what we did is we presented some information, but not any concrete info. And so people were given info, but they weren't able to make decisions because there was no concrete cost and so forth. Whenever we roll it out, let's make sure it's rolled out in an effective manner so that you're giving the employees everything that they need so they can make the decisions that they need to make.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much.
But I want to commend you all, and you're done. Yes, but you all have done an absolutely wonderful, wonderful job, especially Karen. So I want to definitely commend Karen for her knowledge and for the job that you all have done.
We appreciate that. Thank you so very much. My team, I have a wonderful team, not only in benefits administration, but across the board. But thank you so much.
Any other questions for Ms. Ambles?
Yes, sir. Ms. Ambles, in the event that the Supreme Court cancels the ACA and insurance companies decide to increase rates based on, pre-existing conditions or whatever and so forth, are we going to stay at these rates, for the upcoming year? Or how does our consultant, how do they see this right now?
I'm gonna be totally transparent, Commissioner. That is a topic that we have not discussed. I don't, and I can't say that it won't happen, because there's always the possibility that it is. But I know one thing: we would have to be flexible in what we're currently doing and be able to be mobile to make different changes to respond to the environment. Because there's a lot of things that's going on out there, especially on the pharmacy side. As you all know, President Trump, he wanted to change the way the pharmacy benefit managers, the rebates, the drug companies set the list price, and that is the price that we pay when we go pick up a prescription. However, the drug companies will give rebates, but only to pharmacy benefits managers. They're not going to give rebates to individuals. And that was one of the things that President Trump was looking at, the way that is currently handled. They're also looking at different options by allowing us to purchase drugs from countries, using other countries as a benchmark, because a lot of countries, I should say, are significantly cheaper when it comes to their drug prices compared to ours in the United States. So there's a lot of different things out there that you have to keep your eye on. But my hope, and that based on your feedback, that's a conversation that we'll have on Thursday when we meet with the consultants. But I think in the times that we're living in, when it comes to benefits administration, we have to be flexible, we have to be mobile and able to move if we need to. But I appreciate that. That's such a great question, and that's something that you definitely put on my radar.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Can we get some type of grid where we can begin to compare apples to apples on some of these benefits and the costs, so that we can see where we're saving or where we're falling down and where we're picking up, so that we as a board can make a better decision, but also where our employees can also make a decision, a better decision as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Davis, for your feedback, sir. And that's one of the things that I said earlier that we have tasked the consultant with. I said earlier that I know that cost is an issue, for the employees, and we try to diligently work to make sure that we're looking at cost. There's some factors out there that we can control, and there's some factors that we can't control, but we try to do a better job of managing. So it's important for me for the employees to actually see what it is, and the Board of Commissioners, what we're offering in comparison to what the other counties are offering. And we have tasked our consultants to do a real deep dive into side by side what we have versus what someone else have. And I said earlier, we've gotten some preliminary data on that. We're going to be diving deeper in that. And I would like to see the consultants actually come before the Board of Commissioners to make that presentation as to what we have, as to where Clayton is versus, you know, where the other counties are. You know, for our spousal surcharge, and I don't mean to take up you all time, but when it comes to HR stuff, I just love HR. When it comes to spousal surcharge, we haven't changed that in how many years, Angela? A long time. And you have, I don't want to necessarily say the county, but I know one county, you have to pay $100 spousal surcharge to keep your employees, to keep your spouse on your plan. And the strange thing about Clayton is the data clearly shows, when you dive into the data, is that it's not necessarily our employees that's driving cost, it's actually the spouses. And then there have some counties who are saying we're not going to cover spouses at all, which I think is a very radical move. But those realities are out there. But yes, sir.
Let me speak to that, if you don't mind. There are
Yes,
very
ma'am.
few counties in the state of Georgia that do not cover spouses at all. When you're looking at the surcharge, generally they're looking at if the spouse is working and they're offered the benefits. Because years ago, when the whole insurance industry changed with what people claim to be Obamacare, which didn't go away under even this current presidency, it's not a favorable market for those that can take the insurance with their current employers. So I think there needs to be clarity in there. So if you have somebody that's working for the county and their spouse is not offered insurance, then they should not be charged that surcharge. But if they are working for an employer that provides insurance, then they want you to take that insurance with that employer, because there's a difference in cost. As you mentioned, even in the claims, there are difference in costs when you're looking at taking the insurance with the employer. I think there needs to be a little bit of clarity with that. So thank you for that point.
Oh, thank you so much, Commissioner.
All right, any other questions? Again, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all that your staff and you are doing for our employees. At the end of the day, we all are tightening up our belt, so we got to make sure that we get the best rates possible for everyone.
Yes,
So,
sir.
thank you much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
HUD presentation, Mr. Ejiki.
Chairman and Commissioners, good evening.
Good evening.
The request for HUD presentation was made by Commissioner Franklin Warner. The first part of my response was sent to her.
Hold on a second, Mr. Ejiki. Can everybody hear him clearly? Okay, yeah, if you can just take that down.
Yeah. This presentation has two parts. The first part was sent by email to the requester, which was Commissioner Franklin Warner. And one of the questions there was asked for an overview of the county's HUD program. So what you're going to be hearing from me has to do with how the program is ran and processed. But the other part of the hard copy was sent email to the chairman and all the commissioners already. So let's get with it. As you know, next. Click one more time. Oh, that's not the presentation. But anyway, we have 3 main programs being administered in HUD. The first one is MCDBG, the second is Home, and the third one is ESG. These programs actually do different things, and they have different criteria. Next. I wanted to kind of quickly shed light on what has happened since COVID. Since COVID, we have received awards for all the different grants except Home. The first award we received when the pandemic was starting, excuse me, was for CDBG at the amount that you're looking at, 1.4, roughly 1.5, and ESG for $780,000. The second COVID funding from the federal government, it's only for ESG, which is at 1.6 million. And we recently, as of last week, received a third wave of funding, which is only for CDBG, and that was 1.6 million. Next. The question has always been, who receives these funds? As you can see on the slide, county departments, non-profits, local and municipalities, and for-profit businesses. Sometimes folks want that if they can. But if you're a for-profit business, you must fall into an economic development exception, where you are catering to low to moderate income jobs and affordable housing. That's how we get to engage in for-profit businesses. Next. The next thing in HUD is, how can I qualify for these programs? Folks sometimes see it as easy money to go get. And anyone who is familiar with federal grants understands the paperwork involved, all you're going to get into, and how to qualify is not that easy. So to be able to qualify for any of these grants, you must meet any of the national objectives. It has to be a benefit to low to moderate income citizens. It has to be an issue of slum or blight. It has to be either urgent needs. Those are things that your request have to meet before we even start the consideration. If an application doesn't meet any one of these three things, we don't even proceed because we are walking into something we can't really approve. Next. So, under every program, there are upfront caps and different things. When you look across, we have grant administration, 20% max for CDBG, home, 10%. We don't apply the same to ESG because we don't actually get a whole lot of money in that area. So we limit admin cost. So from admin cost is how we pay salaries for employees that administer HUD. You can see the list of things under each category: public facilities, public infrastructure, economic development, slump and blight, housing, public services. Okay, even in public services, there is a cap, 15% cap. You must not allocate or grant more than 50% of the allocation. So those are initial guardrails for what we do that we must follow. Under home, down payment assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, children are set aside. You're required to have a community housing development authority, children. What we use now in the county for that is at a habitat, given that they're nationally known to build and produce mass housing. We have opened up, have discussions with different providers to diversify sub-recipients who can do children also, to kind of do a different style housing. Habitat only does single family in Clayton. We're looking for children who could do multifamily and things like that. ESG don't quite get a whole lot of money. It's just the nature of what it did is emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, outreach, homeless prevention, and homeless management information system, which is partly in the HUD's system that we use. Next. Eligible services, and this is a partial list, please. It gives you a list of things that will come to us and we cannot vet it. In most cases, when we are not sure of what we are seeing, we usually contact the head office downtown, the regional headquarters, and ask them the question, send them the intent letter, and say, hey, can we do this? Those are the precautions we take. Next. Ineligible activities, also a partial list. Buildings used for the general conduct of government. It's high with HUD. You cannot supplant the grant. General government expenses, political activities, lobbying and campaigning. I have a personal need. My HUD group will be moving into my building. I can't even convince them to allow me to pay for painting or changing the carpet. They said no. And that's an interesting situation that I'm facing, that I want to move into a space and I can't use the money. The minimum requirements under governance, tax exempt determination letter, when someone comes to us and say, I'm a nonprofit, we need to see that letter, we need to see the articles of incorporation, we need to see the bylaws, the board of directors, minutes from your last 2 meetings as Secretary of State. We're going to see all those things. Why? It's required because we have an oversight in this program. The oversight we have comes from downtown. They call you, give you a week's notice or so, and say, we're coming to investigate your stuff, or look around, or do reviews. And it's interesting how they do the reviews. They tell you what files, because they see the system you're using. They tell you, I need these 5 files, and the process is, you set the files in the conference room on a table and you leave. What does that mean? They want the file to speak to them and not you. Because when you start explaining it, that means you didn't do it. That's the way they see it. We got in trouble when the chairman got into office the first time, and he remembers that. We awarded a grant, and HUD went out there to go ask them about the grant, and they couldn't explain. Part of it because we assisted them in writing the intent letter. You want to help folks to help people, but sometimes you get caught in that jam. But anyway, that's kind of one of the stuff. Next. And minimum requirements for applicants. You see, we talked about governance first. We look at governance. We look at financial standing. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but to say this. The way we administer the program is on reimbursement basis. That means as a company or a nonprofit, you must have the money to pay for the services, then send us the invoice to reimburse you. In the old days, HUD is where you just go get the money from government and you don't have to spend any money. It was a lucrative business then. Most counties or cities don't do that anymore. You go do the work, submit invoice of the work you did, then the county will do the drawdowns and pay you. That way it doesn't impact the general fund, because you have to have the invoices, the pictures, everything you need in order to do a HUD drawdown. And in here in the county, the folks who do the drawdown, it's not me or my staff. The drawdowns are done by finance. We send the finance to do the drawdown. We do make sure all the documents are there, and they do the drawdown. So if you apply for those grants and we look at your financials, it's shaky, we can't really help you because we're going to get in trouble. Next. Federal requirements. equal opportunity employer statement, agreements, federal dues ID number. Those are the kind of things we pay attention to for applicants, requirements for applicants, what they have to have. Next. No, go back one. Why have minimum requirements? It's where so that we can treat everybody the same and you have the capacity to carry out the activity. Some people come in with great ideas. It sounds good. When you start talking, what they're selling, they can't back up. And that is big problem for us. It even happens in municipalities, commissioners. I got a problem right now and I got to solve. Park Villa. I have some amount parked in that project. Because of how we went, we got to do something different. So it happens in municipalities, it happens in companies that when you get into a project and when you start reading what they are giving you and their plans, and you're going, wait a minute, how are they going to deliver this? And the delivery of projects on time ties into the 1.5 requirement for HUD. Every April 2nd of the year, we have to submit to HUD, although they know, they look at their systems to see if we are spending the money as prescribed. You must spend this money as prescribed. If not, your award will be reduced by the amount of money you did not spend. So you get penalized. You can see why we are cautious about taking all comers if you don't have the capacity. There's a high competition. You might get 1.4 million and you get a request for 5 million. My math is not good enough to turn 1.5 to 5 yet. So it becomes how do you do that? Our job is to leverage HUD funding. HUD tells us they don't want duplication of services. Try as much as not to do that. And the reason why we do them is we have technical assistant trainings. In that training for each funding cycle, when we do that, we are looking for companies and businesses that can partner with each other so that they can do that. Having said this, I would say with COVID, we were given specific directives from HUD. They waived some of the things for us, but not the main things, so that we can move fast and distribute the money. Even with that, it's not really that fast to move the money, because we still got to come to BOC, advertise, come to BOC, the BOC votes, we approve, we send it back to HUD, we sign off, then they open up the IDS accounts for you. Next. This is how the sausage is made. This is the process we use. There are 3 phases that you go through to get this money. So the first process is the intake preliminary review. You check the things we talked about, our governance, financial, the merits of the project. Once you get past that, then we get into eligibility determination. Do you meet any of the 3 national objectives? And how, to what extent? Who else is applying for the same thing you are applying that have better capacity than you? That's where the competition comes. And the last one is our final approval, going through the process. So this is the process that we started using when we took over this program from WFM. As some of you know on the board, it was at one point done by a private company, and we took it over, kind of cleaned up some stuff. Then this is the flow that we established. We tweak it as we go, to make sure and this flow will also send downtown. Usually once you show them what you're doing and they embrace it, it makes it a little bit difficult to slap you upside the head when something goes wrong. Because they've seen that you have a plan, it's documented, you're doing this stuff the best way you can. Next. So, 2020 timeline, this is what's going to happen this year for the regular CDBG, ESG, and home application. We have these dates that our application release, we release it on 11/1. We have that application workshop that I talked about, 2 of them. We're trying to educate our applicants and explain questions they might have. Hard regulation, it's like obtaining a PhD. You read one section, it says one thing, you go to the next one, it says what you read before, it's not true. And it's quite interesting read. So these are the kind of things we go through. We can already know what this is now, so that when we get there, this is the procedure we go through. And we do this every year. Next. For the COVID-19, the first round funding, this is what we did. Use the same pattern and go through the same sequence. What the gap they bridged for us was to narrow down the advertising time and went to 5 days. Next. And we did that on county website and emailed all the regular folks we know that do this business. Round 2, this is what we did. We have not done one for round 3 yet because it's going to come to BOC, it's going to come to BOC, the first BOC meeting in October. That's the one that is open. So we're about to go put it in LR sometime this week to get to you. Next. I talked about the 1.5. This here puts me, keeps me awake. Constantly ask questions of staff. Where are we? Where are we with 1.5? And that's the math behind 1.5. They make you spend this money and don't have the money in the treasury account. One of the disincentives of this is that they tell you that, I know where they've done it. If you don't spend the money as fast as they want, they will deduct your allocation by that amount because of they figure you don't really need the money. This is the only program that I know that is hard to spend money. And because of all the regulatory type attachments to it. Next. Expenditure deadlines. That's what we have to go by. Next. ESG have their expenditure deadlines, and those are the things we go. Usually, the 2 expenditure deadlines has to do when the board sees us come back to clean up action plan. We're going back here to see programs that are not spending. We capture the money. That's our lingo. Capture the money and reallocate it to somebody else who's going to spend it. We do that to clean up the program years so that we don't have monies sitting in past program years. We don't want to go we don't want to go back in years a whole lot. So that concludes my overview of HUD programs. And Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, after the questions, I want to take or ask the board, if you will, grant me, if they give me a feedback on the zoning signs.
Feedback on zoning signs.
Yeah, that we sent out. We did the edit and sent it
Right.
out.
You
Yeah.
gave us a hard copy of what they look like as well.
Yeah, after the questions, yeah.
So my only feedback on it is I thought there was a location or a space on the board that has the actual address. I didn't see a hairdress on the forms that I saw. It stated the business, but it didn't have an address.
No, it didn't have the address, but remember, before we had something, it was too crowded. You can't read it at driving speed. But it has what it did, but the signs are posted on the property.
On the property.
Yeah, the signs are posted on the property.
I
So,
got you.
but the adjustments we made was to make it less crowded, move the county logo in the middle. And I went through the processes that, comments that I heard to move, I shared it with communication. They actually moved the logo to the center so that it kind of promotes us and simplify what's in there to meet, at least while we're simplifying it, make sure we met the zoning procedure law of posting or advertising.
Yeah, with that in mind, yeah, I'm personally, I'm good with what you presented to us. Does any of the other commissioners have any comments on the zoning signs itself?
I do. This is Hamburg.
Commissioner.
Mr. Ejike.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Commissioner.
Right. I have seen the signs and all, and we can look at it and what, but I would like to see the actual sign. If you can bring one to a meeting and all before we vote on it. It looked okay and all, and I was able to read it or whatever, but I want to see the actual size, so that will determine whether or not when you're driving by, how much visibility you'll have as to the words, the lines and the lettering and all. How big, is it big enough and all? And again, and I've said this before, to me, it's the way those signs are put out too. I know somebody told me, oh yeah, they're front and back, but please do not have them facing the highway. Have them turned like campaign signs, so you can see both sides and all. So, but anyway, I would like to see the actual sign if that is possible.
Yeah, it is possible. We have to send it out to print it, but if you all don't mind, we're gonna go to like a print shop, not do it like the actual one you're gonna see, because that costs, they charge us. Oh, we can just go ahead and do it one more time and see what it looks like.
I think we can send and get a draft.
Yeah.
I think T&D can make a draft of that sign easily without having to send it to a print shop.
Okay, all right, thank you, Commissioner, and I got a thumbs up that he would do it from T&D Director.
We'll get a draft
Okay.
mock-up of it.
Great. Can we go to the jump back to the
Well, let's,
CDG program?
hold on a second, Commissioner Hambrick. Is there anybody else who would like to comment about the boards?
About which one, Chairman?
About the board, the zoning boards? Any other additional comments?
Yes, before the signs, I want to say thank you to Mr. Ajiki for the presentation. Not necessarily with the boards, but I specifically asked for this presentation for a couple of reasons. Because number one, when we're talking about the funding that was received for CARES Act, I got a lot of calls inquiring about how it was put forth, and I gave specific questions of what I received from citizens. I do still have questions of how does this process take place under one department, and who is participating in that, but I want to talk about that a little bit more offline now that this presentation has been given. The other thing that is surprising to me is the fact that I'm just hearing now about Hart Villas. As commissioner, understanding that Hart Villas sits in Clayton County, understanding that the current ordinance does require for any dwelling to have its own water meter, and the fact that we needed to bring that into compliance with our ordinances so that we would not continue to drain our resources to be able to stay in something that is not up to date. I'm very concerned that this is the first time I'm hearing of this. And to be very transparent, I have already reached out to Mr. Bernard Franks, the CEO of the Water Authority. So I do want to have a specific meeting next week, Mr. Ajiki, so that we can talk through that process, so that we can find out where your concerns are. It is not impressive to me as one that is a commissioner that this is just brought up to our awareness in a meeting. That is a great concern to me. The other thing I want to mention in your process, Mr. Ajiki, of community development, is making sure that that is spelled out clearly and that citizens are understanding that process is available to them, that they know whatever what their options are to be able to weigh in on concerns on through community development, that is clear, that there's no ambiguity in that. I think I brought up in a previous meeting that my office was inundated with phone calls because in one particular project, there was a county letter sent out in a proposed developer's attorney's envelope. That does not need to happen. So I'm going to look at continuing that conversation afterwards as well. But again, thank you for your presentation. It was extremely thorough. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the rest of the commissioners, and also Commissioner Franklin Warner, the Park Villa example was just to say something we're doing. But if you go back to, I forgot, 2 years or a year ago, on the HOT program action plan, Park Villa was in it. So that project did not show up. It went through the right process, a lot of conversation. So it's in the package that came to the board to approve, and that was approved, part of a CDBG project. So the merits of the project and how it got to be, it's what you just saw described this evening. So, but Commissioner, if you don't mind, if you let me know when I need to.
No, we're going to talk in detail, sir, because
Okay.
you know, we got to remember our previous assistant COO, whatever his title was, Mr. Coquiles, was the one that actually instituted or executed this process. So once again, I've been receiving updates, but it wasn't until your presentation today that I'm made aware that there were some issues with it. So as a commissioner, I don't want this to happen again moving forward. I think the lines of communication need to be extremely clear. They need to be extremely consistent so that, again, we make sure that we're dealing with what we're charged to do, which is make sure that infrastructure is in place and up to date with our current ordinances. So to hear you bring this up today is a great concern, but once again, Rochelle Dennis will be in touch with you so that we can have an offline conversation. One other question though, I noticed in other jurisdictions that the best practices are that maybe the director of community development is not handling some things that you may be handling, that it may be handled by the housing authority. So that's another thing I want you to jot down that we're going to talk about in our offline conversation, because I'm all about making sure that we emphasize best practices so that we can make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of our community and we're doing things that are bringing about proven results.
I'm open and willing to have those discussions.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Any other questions for Mr. Jiki?
Okay, can we go back? Are we on HUD?
Yeah, that's right. You had
Are
something,
we on?
Commissioner Hambrick, please.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, if we're on HUD, I would like to ask Mr. EGK, are there vouchers for homeless veterans?
I know.
Okay. Okay, and the other question is, and a comment, and I know what you mean about spending that money, because years ago when I got on the board and we approved money to go up to Flat Shoals Park, and because that money wasn't spent, remember we redirected the money somewhere else, and then we ended up getting a new board in 2012, and everybody wanted to take away my money from Flat Shoals, so I remember that. Good. Now, do we ever have a case where we have to give back money, or do we always, do we have it where, you know, the money is spent some kind of way? Because I remember that year, we definitely spent it. It just wasn't on where it should have gone, Mr. Chairman.
No, we don't have those problems.
You remember that, right? I mean, I had a really hard time trying to get my money back.
No, Commissioner Hambrick, we don't have those problems. My presentation and analysis is the need to make sure the entry into the project or awarding somebody a salary, they can do the work. It does not mean we don't have challenges. But in the further analysis, we have never, since the county took over HUD, missed the 1.5 expenditure rate. Never. We actually make that rate around March even. We don't have that issue. Well, because usually I'll start making calls myself and making sure folks are spending money, so we are good in that respect.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. One other thing, you mentioned the special money that was sent to us for the COVID purposes and all. Are we close, or do we have a deadline on spending that money, or are we close to spending, or have we spent it all?
You know, the first two came back to back, and we are beginning, and when you go through the process, they are getting the money. It doesn't have a specified limit, but the general directive is to spend it ASAP, because the folks who need it needs to be getting it like right now. So that's the challenge. We're trying to make sure that the soft recipients are actually doing that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. GK, for the emergency shelter grant, is there some money, still in that program now that, I think it was administered out of the extension office? Is there money in that program now, or there's not going to be money in that program for the year or whatever?
What we are doing is we have a reprogramming of some sort. I'm glad you said that. I'm not taking the COO's thunder, but since you asked that, what we did was the extension services delivers two programs, counseling and rental assistance. One of the programs in our shop that we do is to do down payment assistance. That means when you want to buy a home, we're doing the rental part, they're doing the rental part, doing the counseling component form. So we go, okay, the light went off, that putting the down payment assistance, the rental, and the counseling in one place makes good sense. And we have been in consultations with the COO, and as usual, he came up with some tweaking of the idea even to make it better of how that's going to happen. I know in due time he's going to update you all exactly what he's doing, but the last conversations we had with him, he kind of gave us matching orders as to how to structure that to work well. So that's what we're doing. We bring in, one of the reasons to do that is this. You always think, what is the service that gets to the citizens directly and quickly? How do you handle that? It's disconcerting when you get a call with somebody with a child, call you midnight, I don't have a place to stay. Things like that, and you're going, you almost want to pay out of pocket to put them in a hotel. But the program say, don't do that. So what we're doing is, how do we get those? We want to increase home ownership in the county. We want to make sure folks who are losing their job, some of the COVID funding ain't coming. So we put it in-house so that when they call us, we are not saying, go call a sub-recipient that might not live in the county. We can handle it inside. So between, if I place a call to the CEO at 10 p.m. that I need green light to do something, I know I will get it, and then I'll go do whatever it is that we need to do. So that's what the arrangement is. I just saw his picture. So, so that's what we are doing to handle that part of the program.
Commissioner, real quick, Patrick is 100% correct. We anticipate bringing before the board at a future work session in October about the consolidation plan that Mr. Geeky is talking about. In short, cooperative extension has more of an educational arm. It doesn't have a facilitation arm. And so there's been some concern from the cooperative extension side about continuing that. So we're looking at reframing that and bringing a recommendation to the board in October as well.
I'm glad that even though before, the program you were operating where, help people out for a year, whatever, but what proof did we have that now that they were paying less money, that they can go now and qualify for a house, or, they got the credit straight now. And, because sometimes when people have less money to pay out for their rent, they got more to go spend somewhere. So I appreciate knowing that, yeah.
So the education side, you're right, we only had a handoff and we never followed through on really what the success of the program. So by restructuring that, we'll be able to follow it from its inception to there being results in the community that we all are putting our arms around. So that's the ultimate goal, to bring up this position next month. Yes,
Thank you so much, thank you.
I'm glad you all brought that up. I know this may be an aside too, but one note is, this is good information. But one note I have too, I know that couple of years ago we changed to the concierge model, and but I'm not sure if we received feedback on the effectiveness of the concierge model, and I would like for us to visit that as well, because again, as a commissioner who's a policymaker, we're receiving a lot of phone calls in our office about the operational side and about not getting a hold of community development, not being able to understand what the steps are, and being able to get to being able to see businesses come to fruition in our county. Because we need to understand this. At the end of the day, we can come up with all the beautiful language, processes, and procedures, but at the end of the day, community members are looking for end results. We're looking for businesses to thrive in our community. And as a commissioner, it's a great concern to me that when I have business owners, including those with the, I think it's the South Metro Business Development or home builders, that they are working in other areas, adjacent counties, because they just don't feel that we are receptive, number one. Number two, responsive, or that this concierge model is really working. As policymakers, I really want to see more reporting on seeing the effectiveness of the things that we vote on and seeing that it's actually working, because all we have to go by are the complaints, are the phone calls. But I really want to see the effectiveness of it.
Your point is duly noted, Commissioner. We'll make sure we provide an update on that as well.
I have a question. Is there a cap on the tenant-based rental assistance?
Say that again, Commissioner
Is
Davis.
there a cap on the tenant-based rental assistance?
Yes, there is a cap on the down payment assistance and the rental base. The general idea on the rental base, the rental assistance thing, is that you don't want to keep them on that string for a long time. There are certain requirements they're going to have. That is the counseling part. That I'm going to buffer you for a minute to get your foot ground, but to go look for a job. You have to show that you're actively looking to better yourself for the help to come, not create, if you will, a state where somebody now relies on the assistance instead of doing the things they need to do that. On the homeownership part, like Commissioner Gregory referenced, you come in to buy a house and we can advance you. The money is to lower the mortgage, in most cases, really. To make the mortgage affordable, we can do that. So there are caps in different areas and requirements to get those monies.
I understand, and I believe there's a difference between home buyers assistance and rental assistance. And with the temperature of the season that we're in, my concern is some of these folks that have lost their jobs are getting partial pay or are leaving and needing an emergency shelter. What is the process of going through it? How long does it take for them to receive that assistance?
What we do is, for right now, the way it's structured right now is they will call, they usually call the housing authority or call us. Once they call us, then the extension services will get in touch with them, figure out what's going on, and see if they have an immediate assistance for shelter and what they will do to, but there is no other way but if they call us, which they do, or they call any of the sub-recipients that do housing also in the ESG programs, they call around or they go on our website. I encourage commissioners to go see our new website. So they call us and that's how we know, or they call the sub-recipients, then we take it from there.
Any other questions? Commissioner Davis, you have something else?
Great points, Commissioner Davis.
No, I'm just saying thank you for that information.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that question, Commissioner Davis.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jicky, for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
Mr.
general
Mr.
assistance.
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on just for a minute, Chairman. Yeah, I want to thank you too for attending my 2 meetings on tomorrow, and I think you have agreed. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, Commissioner, I have agreed.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate
If he hadn't, he did now. Okay.
All right.
All right, general assistance grants, Ms. Bivens, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So last Friday, I believe it was Friday, I sent a spreadsheet on the application that we received for the general assistance grants that we provide to the nonprofits every year. On that spreadsheet, you have the applicant's name, the previous year's amounts awarded, the current year request, which the total was about $1.5 million total requested, the current year recommendation, which we have $900,000 available, their scores as rated by the Clayton Collaborative, the service areas along with the program participants, the total participants, as well as the number of Clayton County residents of that total participants. They were ranked in score, highest to lowest. I actually provided 2 options this time. One, using a cutoff of 90 or above, and the second option is the cutoff of 95 or above. I also made an attempt to maintain funding for those applicants who have previously received grants from us, and then award funding as available from the remaining funds to any new applicants that met the scoring criteria of 90 or the 95 or above, depending on which one you wanted to choose. So I had put this on here because I remember last year, I think a couple of you said that you would like to have had a little bit more time to discuss the grants or look at them before voting for them at the next board meeting. So this is just an opportunity for you all to discuss amongst yourselves with me how you want to proceed, because these are discretionary. They're totally at your discretion on the award. I just make a recommendation using some criteria to try to make the process fair. However, these of course can be changed any way that you would like to be changed. So I'll open up the floor to you all to make any comments, changes, discuss, or however you want to proceed with this evening.
Well, if you're looking for direction to go, whether with the 95 percentile rating or the 90 percentile, I say we go with the 90 because that we're able to help more organizations are included within the 90 percentile. And everybody knows that with current conditions with COVID, a lot of businesses are struggling in organizations. So I appreciate the options that you presented and the breakdown of the ratings that you as well as the Collaborative Authority put together. Are there any questions for Ms. Bivens?
I have a comment on what you just said, Chairman, and what Ms. Bivens said about that 90 percentile. Because I saw scores and all, but I saw a particularly organization that I know is doing a lot of service now, since the schools are virtual or whatever, and people are looking for either tutorial services or somebody to help their kids with the virtual. But I noticed their number was in the 80s. And I said, I really would like for them to continue to get the funding because of this, because I think these numbers were given prior to COVID. I'm not sure, because I'm thinking that if it was after, then the number for this particular organization would have been higher. because of the activity that's going on now as far as helping the kids with their studies and all. So that's one thing. And the other, that's just a comment and all to consider, please. And the other thing is, I keep saying this African Children's Fund or whatever. I don't know really what they do. I know we have called upon them a couple times with no success. So maybe somebody else can answer that and let me know if they have had any success with them.
Yeah, I can answer that. I've had
The
a
same,
relationship with them.
concern, and that was going to be my question. I've even had people to say they called and the number was disconnected, and I think they were supposed to be one of the organizations that was actually helping people with their rent payments or whatever. I mean, and so again, I know, the collaborative, went through these, and I just had that concern, yeah.
Yeah, so in reference to the African Children's Fund, they provide support to children who are homeless as well as their families, and as you said, Commissioner Gregory, I think it was you, provide assistance for rental or even some housing. So I have had a positive results with them, and I don't know why or what happened where you weren't able to reach them, but I know that they have a organization that is operating and supporting the citizens here in Clayton County. So I would definitely like to see them continue to get some funds. I can't remember what the amount was that was being allocated. Do you have that in front of you, Ms. Bivens?
Yes, sir. So I have the application here, which I provided to everyone, and there's a lot of them. We didn't print them this time because it's a bunch of paper. So I put a flash drive in everyone's mailbox downstairs that had all the applications on there. And looking at their application on page 3, it talks about the program's purpose. And it says the purpose of this program is to help to alleviate extreme housing cost burden, which is the most common housing problem affecting Clayton County's low and moderate income households. They said that they collected data from the HUD office that shows 21% of the county residents live below poverty level, and said this could rise as the population increases. They don't make any reference in here to COVID because I do believe these applications were due. I'm trying to see if there's a date on here.
I think it was the end of the year.
Like back in February or March, so March. They were due back in March, so this was before COVID. Now I do want to, one thing, we did receive some COVID CARES Act funding. We are, hopefully, will be receiving a phase 2. I got an email today from ACCG that they're in communication with the state and are encouraging them to go ahead and release those funds because we would need to spend those by December 31st, if not sooner, because the state has to report back to the federal government. So the state's deadline for the counties and cities to spend it may be before December 31st. We may be able, I think we do have an opportunity to provide some funding to some of the nonprofits using that funding, but it would have to be COVID related in order for them to receive those funds. However, we haven't received confirmation that we will be receiving those funds yet, but if we do, we can certainly probably use some of those funds for that. Additionally, Mr. Stanford and I had discussed possibly using some of those funds as well that we already have received because when we made the submission to the state, we used all public safety salaries. So we got the money, we got all of our funding in. So now what that would allow us to do is kind of use some of that money for some other areas that's COVID related as well. So we may have some funding available that we can look at providing some additional funding to some of these nonprofits as long as it's COVID related. And Commissioner Hambrick, to your point, I believe you were referencing the SAT, ACT Leadership Enrichment Academy?
Yes, correct.
I think that's who you were talking about. Because I remember last year that was one that you had asked us to provide some funding for, which we did have some additional funding left over out of our allocation. If they have some increased services or they're providing services due to COVID, we can probably provide them some funding to assist with the additional that they had above and beyond what they normally would have provided, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does, and I think they would fit in there because of the virtual learning and all that they're doing here in Clayton, and all. I think they would fit into that. Now, I miss what you were saying about the amount of money that the African Children's Fund get,
So last year, hold on.
and how many people they serve. Because I noticed that on some of the groups or some of the organizations did not answer that question about participants served and participants in Clayton County that are served.
Okay, Africa Children's Fund, they received $25,000 last year. They requested 25,000 this. I'm sorry, they requested 35. I made the recommendation to leave it at the same level of last year of 25. And let's see. So they have 440 participants, and they did not put in here the number that were Clayton County residents.
I know, I noticed that.
Yeah.
What I will do, I'll wait another year and see, and after that year, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if I send my people to you, and maybe they'll get some help, because they certainly don't respond to myself and my constituent aid.
I don't have a problem. Please send them all. Send them all to me. I'll take them all.
As you were talking, Commissioner Hambrick, I was looking through it to see if I could find in here in the application where they put the participants. It does show that the total number of participants served, it says 463 unduplicated Clayton County participants were served last year in direct housing. Referrals to other agencies were provided to households with over 1,900 people to receive supportive services and resources, including healthcare, food, furniture, tutoring, tax preparation, employment services, counseling, and transportation. They're proposing to serve 600 unduplicated persons in direct housing support during the period to be covered by this grant, which is Clayton County. That number that's on there did not get transferred over. I just took the numbers that the Clayton Collaborative, they had filled in those columns to and use that number that was there. But in reading this, it shows 463 participants were served last year in Clayton County.
Well, I won't say it on this call, but I'll give it another year. And again, I would like to request your assistance, Mr. Chairman.
Not a problem.
And again, you know, it's just kind of strange that, you know, I haven't had any luck with them either. And so bringing it to everybody's attention is just kind of like, you know, to wake them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I totally understand if you run out of money. You know, the same way is like with CSA, community service, run out of money. I mean, that's just it. You know, they tell the people. But when you call and there's a disconnect on the phone, or you just can't reach anyone,
And I agree with that.
That's acceptable.
I'll also mention that to Mr. Brinson, because that is one of the, I believe that's one of the responsibilities that they have, is to check up on these individuals to make sure that they are providing the services that they should be providing. Right. In addition, we get the financial reports and things from them, but as far as actually going out there, making phone calls or what have you, I believe that's one of the things that he is doing or should be doing.
And especially that count of 400 and something people. Yeah. I would like to think that at least 2 or 3 of my folks could have been counted in that 400.
We're going to get your folks taken care of, Commissioner Hambrick.
Okay, thank you.
I can ask him to start putting in his application, or we can put it in our financial report requirements, that they provide a roster of the people that they served. That's another way, I guess, to show if they, you know.
I like that. I like that. Yes, that number seems a little high.
Yeah, some ideas. I come up with some good ideas.
Okay, yes you do. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Another question is, and for anybody watching this, my question does not say I'm not supportive of it. It's just trying to gain some knowledge. But what does, tell me specifically, what does Rainbow House do? I mean, I know overall, but I guess I'm having a feeling that they're kind of like just, you know, another group home, because I know we give them a lot of money every year. And I'm just really curious as to why. I know from what I understand, when they initially started, you know, people were leaving little babies at the airport and they took care of little babies, but now they don't take care of young kids and so forth. And so I'm just trying to figure out, why is this particular entity, why do we do this when there's so many privately run?
Okay, so according to their application, their description, it states that Rainbow House is a nonprofit agency serving children, youth, and families who are in need of safe, stable housing and services due to abuse, neglect, and homelessness. They're located in Clayton County, of course. They were founded in 1988 by community members who were concerned about the welfare of neglected, abused, and troubled children and youth in Clayton County and surrounding areas. They provide temporary emergency shelter for children referred by DFACS in the Department of Juvenile Justice.
That helps me understand, okay, when you say refer by defects, that clears it
Okay.
up.
Okay.
Yeah, and also when the police officer, especially late at night, have to
Right.
take a child in that's abused or neglected, they'll take them to Rainbow House.
Yeah.
And they also do
I said, if
examinations
you
there.
don't know, just ask, right? Thank you.
Ms. Bivens, also in allotting the funds to some of these organizations, is there a percentage cap that we will fund them based upon their total revenue source or take-in?
Can you repeat that again?
I said, is there a cap on the fundings on us giving away the money? Is there a percentage cap that do we give away 15% or 20% of their total revenues?
No, sir, there's not. Their request is not based on their total revenues. I haven't looked at these this year, but I typically try to look at what their total revenue is and see how much of it is coming from us.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, my thought is we don't want to be 50% of their funding source, because it makes it very unhealthy for not only them to stay in existence, but for us to continue to fund them throughout. And then also too, looking at a couple of those, my thought is can we send that to you on where, in my mind, some of them we might want to increase the funding for?
Yes, you can. But what I ask is that if we want to increase, I will also ask for you to let me know where you would like to decrease.
Man, I knew you were gonna say that.
And Ms. Bivens, a little bit tapping on a little bit to what Commissioner Davis was saying, but going in another direction though. How much of the money that we give these organizations do they spend on staffing?
I can provide that as well. I did an analysis that was a couple of years ago. I did have about 3 years ago, I believe. I hadn't done it the last 2 years, but I did look at that as well because that was a concern of mine as well as to how much they're spending on staffing. Because as Commissioner Davis, his point was that we don't want them spending money on staff. These funds are to provide programs.
Exactly.
Provide services and programs for the residents of Clayton County.
All right.
Sure.
One last,
I can get all that together and have it to you before our meeting next week if you would like that.
Ramon, I believe in the last discussion where we did an assessment of that, Commissioner, we want to say the administrative costs never exceeded more than 15%.
Any other questions?
that would be of their operating expenses.
All right.
Well, I do have just one point. I sit on the Economic Development and Transportation for ACCG now, and we did discuss that final funding for the CARES Act, and they were just waiting for a final meeting with the governor to go ahead and get that approved. But they feel pretty confident that that's going to happen really soon.
And if that does happen, we've been told that our cut will be about $14 million. So
Correct.
that's just an estimate.
Any other questions? All right, well, we thank you, Ms. Bivens, for your presentation, and I encourage the commissioners, if there is an area that you want to increase, decrease, make sure that you get that into to her as soon as possible so she can hopefully prepare something for our next meeting so we can get this money into a lot of folks' hands who's definitely in need of it. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, two takeaways. I want to make sure Commissioner Davis would like to know the percentage of funding that we're providing. Is that correct?
Yes, in relation to their operating expenses, correct.
And then the percentage of the salaries to program costs. Those are two things. I will add that to the spreadsheet and get that to you all by the end of the week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, let's move to solid waste management. Compulsory trash. Mr. Matarco and crew.
Is that a suit?
It is. Even with a tie and all, I'm impressed.
Amazing.
Okay, all right. Looking good.
Mr. Matarko.
Well, this is a response from the request to do a presentation to kind of summarize some of the options you have moving forward with the solid waste program in the county. Jacobs is here. They're the consultant of record for the Solid Waste Management Authority, doing a lot of work with the landfill. Josh Lawson, which I'm sure y'all have all seen through the years of sitting on that board, is here to present the options we have. And we also have Chuck Button from Jacobs here. He was a integral person involved in the Gwinnett program, both from the county side and the Gwinnett Clean and Beautiful. And if you have questions concerning Gwinnett, best practices, lessons learned, what not to do if you're interested in their program, he can definitely shed some light in Q&A with him on that side of the equation if you so choose. But right now we'll move forward with Josh Lawson doing the presentation.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for having me as always. Are you going to click slides or I'm going to click slides? All right. So just a quick background. Last time we did an evaluation of a mandatory or any kind of change to the solid waste collection programs back in 2017. As many of you will remember at the time, after that, you guys went out and solicited public comment, ultimately deciding not to proceed with any changes in the program. So we have not done any significant reevaluation since 2017. So as part of kind of looking at best practices and looking at what's going on in terms of solid waste collection in Clayton County, we put together this matrix of what the cities are doing. You'll notice this hits on all the major incorporated cities in the county with the addition of the city of Atlanta. One thing to draw attention to is every major city in Clayton County currently does provide solid waste collection services. Some of them self-perform those services. Others are privately contracted out to either to individual waste haulers. Most of them offer a wide range of services, including curbside collection. Some don't offer recycling at the moment, but for the most part, all do offer some kind of recycling, as well as some additional special collection pickups like yard debris, bulk items. Across the board, for the most part, those fees are collected from the citizens via the property tax bill. However, there are a few instances specifically where they self-perform, where there is either a separate bill or the collection is done on the water bill itself. And not to just look at cities, also to look at counties in comparison to kind of what is taking place in the greater metro Atlanta area. We did take a look at 5 additional major counties beyond Clayton. You will see that 2 of the ones we looked at, Fayette and Henry, have the exact same program that Clayton County currently has, which is a free market program, which basically means any hauler can operate in the county. Citizens have the option to have curbside collection or not have curbside collection, and they can use any hauler of their choice. You will see that you do have some slight variations with some other counties. The two main ones to call out are DeKalb and Gwinnett. As Jeff mentioned at the beginning, at the introduction, Gwinnett has mandatory, franchised, or exclusive household collection, where they solicit and award contracts by district to individual haulers, and curbside collection is mandatory for all citizens. DeKalb County has the same premise, except they self-perform. So they own all of their trash trucks, all of their infrastructure, but provide the same service, which is also mandatory. So in looking at possible solid waste collection program change options here for Clayton County, we kind of highlighted 5 main options, kind of all working in an ascending order from small involvement to larger involvement from the county's perspective. The first option is what currently exists, which is just leave it alone, free market. As I explained earlier, that is no requirement to have trash collection as a citizen, and if you do choose to have curbside collection, you call up any hauler. that is offering business in your area, and you contract directly with them. Next option, one step up, would be considered an optional collection by approved haulers. This is where the county would actually pre-screen and pre-approve a select amount of haulers that are allowed to do business in the county, and then it would still be optional for the citizens to have curbside collection. One step up and one modification of that option would be to have the pre-selected approved haulers, but then make collection mandatory for the citizens. The larger option that we've heard more about, and we see a lot of the cities implementing in some of the counties like Gwinnett, is a mandatory collection county contracted scenario. So that means the actual haulers are contracted directly with the county handles the payment to the haulers, and curbside collection is mandatory for the citizens. The fifth option is taking that same package, and instead of having private haulers do the collection, the county would actually own and operate its own collection infrastructure. So just a brief kind of pros and cons, and there's a lot of things here on the screen. I'm just going to hit on some of the highlight ones for each of these options in order to be brief. But for the current market, the current free market option or program that exists in the county, the major pro here is your citizens choose the hauler that they want to use, or any other alternate disposal method. If they don't want to have curbside collection, they can take it to the landfill, a transfer station in one of the nearby cities, but it gives them those options to choose from. Some of the major cons from this is there's not a requirement for all of your residents to have a means of trash collection and trash disposal. You don't have the ability to offer any minimum service base. And another big one is it doesn't incentivize your haulers to control pricing, and it does not do much in terms of actually helping some of the illegal dumping issues that exist in the county. We're jumping here. So the next one, the optional collection approved haulers. This is a scenario where the county would pre-screen haulers, and only those pre-screened would be allowed to collect in the county, and then at that point it is still optional for the citizens to use those services. This does start to somewhat increase the waste collection process or the waste management process by standardizing or trying to standardize the level of service provided. The pro here, big one here, you now have the ability to try to drive your haulers to give some minimum service package in terms of the frequency, the type of collections they offer. Your citizens still get the option to choose from a select list of haulers. In terms of cons, again, we still don't have a situation where your residents are required to have collection services. The other big con from this is as you start to drive haulers to expand their service offerings, you do risk them passing those costs directly over to the citizens, so your citizens potentially see an increase in their cost. The mandatory collection approved haulers option is basically the same pros and cons, with the big difference being you have the pro of, at this point, all of your citizens are required to have a trash service at the curbside. Unfortunately, again, the major drawbacks of this is that as you push this minimum service package over to the haulers, there is a likelihood that they will pass that on to your citizens, which would in turn drive their cost up. This one also has a potential con of getting some pushback from your citizens because you've now mandated trash collection at the curbside. Mandatory collection, county contracted haulers. This is what we typically talk about or hear about in terms of franchising. Other terms we've heard in that are basically when we hear a franchise program or privatized program, those terms are all synonymous with this option. This is currently essentially the option most of the cities in the counties have. This is we've got several counties like Gwinnett that have this. This has got a high level of waste management capacity in terms of you're standardizing collection by having one hauler in a specific district. Everyone has trash collection service. At this point, by creating a more manageable customer base for your haulers, you now can not only influence service packages, you can mandate service packages in your contracting process, but instead of having the con of the two previous options, you actually have the potential to drive prices down because the haulers are now incentivized because they're only billing the county as opposed to, say, billing 20,000 customers. And they also have the option to pick up every customer on the street as opposed to potentially jumping from one house, 5 houses down, 6 houses down. So they see a lot of efficiency in their operational cost. Cons here is the citizens at this point lose the option to choose their hauler. The only hauler they would be allowed to use would be the hauler contracted for the district in which they reside. This does come with potential needs to develop programs to manage the contracts and manage the relationships with the haulers. And then you do have the impact on some of your smaller haulers in the county who would not be selected because you would likely have fewer districts than you do have haulers operating in the county. Another one to note here is this would require some significant front-end funding in order to bring a program like this to bear. The last option we looked at is essentially the same, just instead of having private haulers doing the collection, you're going to at this point have a county-owned and operated trash collection system. The pros and cons are essentially the same. The biggest differential here in the cons is that you've got an additional expense that comes with this package. Because the county landfill is not in a position to receive and handle all the waste that is generated in unincorporated Clayton County, you'd have the additional expense of trying to figure out where the disposal goes. So that would incur additional costs beyond the previous option that was discussed. To expand just a bit more on the mandatory collection, county contracted haulers, also known as franchising or privatization, we did take a look at the different fee collection options. There are several. You've got the tax bill, which is predominantly the way most municipalities handle fee collection for mandatory curbside collection. You also have the option of adding the fee to the water bill, a standalone bill generated by the finance department, or generated by a private third-party entity. And then the last and probably least favorable option would be to continue to have the haulers do individual bill collection. We made a small little measles chart here, just kind of hitting on the high points in terms of, which options have the, which billing options give you the ability to potentially bill directly to the property owner, as opposed to if you had a renter in the location. And you'll see 3 of the options give you that, the tax bill and then the third party and the separate billing options. We also looked at which ones had the ability to give annual billing options, which has advantages because all your funding comes in at once, as opposed to those that had the option to go monthly billing. In addition to quarterly options, you'll see of all the options, only one of them does not incentivize the haulers to drop prices, and that's the one where you keep the haulers responsible for bill collection. And then we kind of rated them there on the far right in terms of the level of effort required to actually bill and collect the fee. You'll see that the tax bill we consider the lowest. This is the mechanism in which the cities in your county currently collect their solid waste fees, is through your tax bill. And then we rated them water bill, probably the next favorable option, and then beyond that, the 3 final options are considered to be of a high level of effort to bill and collect the funds. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Jeff just to touch on some of the short-term measures we looked at to address illegal dumping.
Okay, I have a question, if that's okay for you, Josh.
Yes, absolutely, Commissioner.
Yeah, this is Gail Hambrick. You mentioned Fayette and Henry County having the free market and all. Now, in Clayton, the county unincorporated has free market, but the cities, have the other choice, the mandatory. Now, what about Fayette and Henry? Do the cities, the municipalities in those counties have the mandatory or the free market?
Some do. Some of the cities do have mandatory collection. We did not look at all the cities in those 2 counties, but yes, it is far more common in Metro Atlanta and Greater Metro Atlanta for the cities to have mandatory collection programs in place.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions for me? Okay.
Yeah, don't go too far.
Okay, CEO Stanford asked us when we spoke over the last couple of years about these programs, since the more advanced ones do take some time to implement. What are some low-hanging fruit, potentially on a time frame, that could be done quickly, relatively quickly, to make what we think might be a measurable impact on the illegal dumping in the county? So all these things we've kind of thrown on the table. They all have costs associated with them, of course, but one could argue over time, if we're spending a ton of money picking up trash that people are dumping illegally and we are having to dispose of it, why not just have them, instead of dumping them in our neighborhoods, just dump it at a central location or at an actual dumpster, at least make our cleanup efforts a little bit easier. There's drawbacks in all these things too, but in light of trying to give some options if we wanted to do something quickly while we try to set up one of these longer term programs, I mean, obviously putting dumpsters around the county and letting people dump for free, opening up the landfill and say, bring your trash in here for free. Amnesty Day is a little different of a beast. That's usually for more difficult to dispose items. The Water Authority puts on one right now in the county that's coming up. Really one time a year. We can probably try to broaden that. Or we could go in contract with vendors that help supplement the efforts to clean up the right-of-ways and these dump sites, mainly what Refuge Controls battles day to day. And then one other option that Chairman Turner asked us to put on the presentation was just the other topic, major topic that's been discussed through the last several years too at the Solid Waste Management Authority, is the idea of a transfer station. So we just wanted to put that on the presentation in case there's questions or comments about that the consultant's here and they are free to answer questions.
Well, let me ask you a question in reference to the landfill. Some of those proposals, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the landfill in jeopardy of shortly?
If you increase the intake drastically, the
we'll shorten the life of the landfill.
The landfill will have a very short lifespan.
And that comes with more problems as well as financial obligations, because you can close it, but it can't be closed because EPA. You would accelerate your costs to close the landfill. Also, right now, any given month, we're probably 60-70% of what goes into our landfill are generated by our county departments. It could be just trash, or it could be just the pickup on the county right-of-ways, debris, trees get knocked down. That cost is considerable throughout the year that the landfill's not getting. That option, I mean, it is an option, but there's obviously some cons and costs directly related to that. I would not recommend that for any length of time, but if we need to do something, that is an option. Yeah, but also because of its location
The
in
practicality.
Lovejoy, a lot of folks can spend a lot of time going to the nearby wood line as opposed to going to the landfill. So that is another reason why the transfer station idea is a topic that should have some legs. Especially, I didn't see the timeline slide. Did you not include that?
For
The timeline for initiating each of those proposals.
For each of them at the bottom of the slide, if we can make it hot again. At
Why
each
you
option
doing
at the
that?
bottom, it gave an approximation.
I don't know
the overlap
about the
on
other
top.
commissioners, but there's a screen on the bottom of mine that is blocking that. I can see
Okay,
it.
I quickly can run through it. Obviously, the first option of the free market, that's what you're doing today, so there's no timeline. You have what you have right there. The optional collection with the approved haulers, that one we're saying about 6 months to a year to implement. You might have some code stuff or some bidding processes you have to go through to identify the options that you want these providers to provide to the community. About the same time, if you're doing it where you're mandating it that they have to pick one of these predetermined haulers, about the same time, the same type of items you have to go through to bid the process and probably review our ordinances. The mandatory collection, approximately 2 years. That has some variability on it, but it really depends on how the program would be structured. Josh spoke to, you have to kind of front load some of the money. If the decision is made to ultimately go this route and ultimately to do it by the tax bill, for example, taxes are collected one time a year. So we wouldn't want to start it the month opposite when we're collecting things. We want to make sure we would start it once we have money in hand to start paying out initially. So there's some strategy on some timelines depending on what billing method and how the program is structured. But that definitely, of the previous options, is the longest one. Then, of course, if the county wants to contemplate doing it themselves, I mean, procuring equipment, facilities, I mean, that one is a long time.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any questions for Jeff or Josh?
Dear Mr. Chair, Mr. Matarco, those short-term suggestions, I didn't like any of those, because I feel like that's where we are now.
There's not a, excuse me.
I know.
There's not one that we just want to say, this works. You know,
Yeah.
or we've already done it.
It's located. Remember a few years ago when we did that, I forgot what it was called, where we went around and picked clean sweep. And you had everybody from Henry County coming over to District 1, dumping off their trash. And even if we set these dumpsters out, that's just more reason for everybody to come and just dump their stuff. I like that transfer station because some years ago when Edie Young, we went down to some county down south, and we saw one of these transfer stations in action, and where they had, just retired seniors who just want to sit around and talk trash all day. They manned it, and they also, you have to show your driver's license, before you come in that you're a Clayton County resident. And so, I mean, because we don't want to set up everything from this side where Henry County is, for Henry County folk from District 3, you got Fed coming over, because they got a dumpster or whatever. So we've got to have some kind of way to maintain that. I really like that transfer station because just like at the landfill, the people would have to show their ID or something that they're a Clayton resident in order to dump at that, leave their trash at the transfer station.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't really familiar with a transfer station, you just build out a site where citizens can go up, drive up, and dispose of their trash, and it's at usually at a lower rate than what the landfill is charged at. Or we'll set that, depends on the carrier.
It depends on the carrier. There will be a cost.
Yes.
I mean, that's.
But we can also build in administration costs for the county. It just depends on the option that we would go into. But the Solid Waste Authority Board is looking at that option to bring some additional information before the board. So we'll be able to clarify that a little bit more in detail. Yes, ma'am.
Even the people who are dumping now, they would be the same people who would come over and dump in our dumpsters at Clayton County's expense. A few years ago, during campaign season, my husband and I were out putting up campaign signs, and at the corner of Boulder Crest and Anvil Block, people had made that a dumping site. And we putting up signs, and the guy comes up with a truckload of trash, and my husband talks to him and tells him, you can't do that. Shows him his Clayton County police ID. The guy still stood there arguing with him, that he can dump his trash there because everybody else dumping their trash. And he was from Fulton County or something.
Wow.
So we've got to have it where we can make people identify themselves as Clayton County.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Jeff or Josh?
I do. At the current pace, when is our landfill scheduled to go off commission?
What we're trying to do is control the flow of trash that we're taking in at the landfill. That's why we raised up the prices at one time. We brought them down a little bit lower. But at the same time, we made a requirement only Clayton County citizens and businesses can utilize the landfill currently. And all that was in an effort to try to minimize the trash intake at the landfill, Mr. Tarver?
Approximately right now, the landfill's taking in maybe around 40 tons a day on average, and that's really small. If you look at the EPD formula that we have to submit every year for the lifetime of the landfill, it's off the top of my head approximately 100 years at the current rate. When you start bringing back 200, 400 tons a day, you start running into the gas extraction system in the landfill that would have to be decommissioned and recommissioned in certain areas. And the 100 years is somewhat misleading because that's the full build out of the landfill. You have 2 cells at the landfill. There's 6 cells six cells overall, and only 4 of them are developed that are receiving trash. Cells 5 and 6, in order to greatly capture that 100 years at the current rate, you would have to develop their cells so they can receive trash. A liner system, a leachate system has to go in there. You're probably talking $3 to $4 million worth of upfront costs just to be able to put trash in that area. But that's the overall permit of the landfill's footprint is what we're required to report on, just like we could just keep on putting trash in there. So the answer is 100 approximately, but it's misleading of what really that 100 means, and it's not readily available today for the 100 years.
And that's taken into account.
Not only that, but my follow-up questions. Thank you.
But that's also taking into account as he said, the conditions that are currently in existence. The price of the landfill only for Clayton County residents. So if you reduce the price or open it up for anybody again, that's gonna start dwindling the 100-year mark as we bring in more trash, more tonnage.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I ask everybody is don't say tax bill. Please don't say that. Please don't say billing on tax bill. Also, I mean, and I know it's a tough time for a lot of people right now, and so that really scares them, when you think their mortgage may go up. But also, too, I like the idea of staying consistent. Like right now, most people in the county, they pay on a quarterly basis. So if you can kind of keep it the same way, I think that consistency, that would be a lot better, just to being able to pay on a quarterly basis like now. And I know that little chart you showed, that ranked kind of low, didn't it? As far as like in-house, if the finance was to bill out or whatever that area.
It produces additional tasks, to say the least, that someone has to do to go bill 60,000, maybe off the top of my head, residences on a quarterly nature. And the costs associated with billing, the costs associated with collection of those households. Well, you're gonna have customer service, however, but I mean, you can structure that with the hauler or with the county taking that on.
Nobody want to call the hauler. They want to call their commissioner.
You will have a certain amount, obviously. But it does factor in additional steps, additional oversight, additional manpower. Obviously, if you go down that list, the farther down you get, the more time it takes, the less, or the more steps it comes involved in the process. And that's not a recommendation for the tax bill. We're just trying to present the facts, and y'all can make the decision.
One of the things also that I hear from citizens, they are tired of a different trash service coming into their neighborhood every day of the week. I mean, and that's just the way it is. They want to be consistent. One hauler come in one day instead of 5 different folks, every day of the week, at 5 o'clock, this hauler is going to wake you up on Monday. On Wednesday, this is going to wake you up. So
I mean, that would be the mandatory collection where the county takes the lead, is what you're describing.
Right. Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, we will continue to work on this. At the end of the day, it's just making sure that we try to find ways to help beautify and educate our citizens.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. question, and it may have been answered and I missed it. But do citizens show ID when they dump at the
Yes, ma'am.
landfill?
Yes,
They do?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
Like, I know, Mr. Chair, you said we'll continue to work on it, but, Mr. Chair, Mr. COO, but what's our next step? Because I just don't want us to do like we did the last time and just drop this. We need to move forward.
Yeah, so we have I can't tell you exact date, another solid waste management authority meeting, and we're going to continue our discussion with and you and I will have this discussion next week, but the discussion on the transfer station idea or proposal is something to bring, because that's Josh, how long did you say that it would take technically? We're talking about timelines again. If this transfer station idea came to fruition for the north end of the county, how long would it take technically to get up and running?
In order for it to get up and running, you're probably looking at, at least 6 months of procurement process to get a private entity on board. I know there was already movement being done on land identification, which helped speed it up. But the timeline to have it designed, built, and operational, you're probably looking at a few years.
A few years?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, don't forget, please take out northwest part of the county.
Okay, so
Just
moving on.
Just a reminder.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
You could
Yes,
probably
ma'am.
you could probably push it through, Chairman. In you're not going to get it done in a year. I mean, the time the procurement part is there, and these are pretty big pieces. There's permitting that has to go into it. You got to get it permitted and get it online. I would say anything less than 2 years would be a bit optimistic.
Yeah, so with that in mind, all the options that we looked at, everything that you presented today is going to take time.
Yes, sir.
And that's one thing that the citizens are going to have to be a little patient with. It's not going to happen overnight, regardless if it's mandatory trash pickup or if it's contracting. The only thing that is going to remain the same and continue to operate as it is today is the free market. But we are looking at ways how we can try to mitigate the illegal dumping and keep our county beautiful. But again, the one thing that we can work on immediately, and Mr. Garber is always saying that, is educating the citizens about trash and illegal pickup. Yes, I did that just for you, Mr. Garber, so I can get a little clap out of you. Appreciate you.
And I with that, Mr. Chair, and even my last community meeting, we played the video with the warden talking about, the cleanup and how people throwing trash out, and it seemed to be very effective. Because I know a lot of times citizens don't think we're doing anything, but, that's a non-stop battle that his people are fighting, picking up the trash. And so playing that video, part of the education piece, just while we're waiting for people to log on to Zoom, and we played it within the meeting too. But at the same time, since we have this issue at hand, I understand, it takes time for all of this. Nobody knows better than me how government is like a snail, but, well, we all know, nobody knows better than us. But at the same time, can the Solid Waste Authority perhaps do more meetings, whereas if y'all were meeting once every 6 months, now that we have an issue at hand, so that this does not drag, so, maybe you can meet more frequently to maybe, talk about these things and get something done instead of let's just wait.
No, we have been. Basically, we just call meetings as been needed, and lately, because we are talking on this topic of transfer stations, we've probably met so far this year, what would you say, 4 or 5 times? So we're having more frequent meetings. This is important to us as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I was gonna say that I know the transfer station, that was something that we had conversation about when I was vice chair. So you said 4 to 5 times, Mr. Chairman, but I know that's been, a couple of years at least now, going into maybe the 2nd year. But I do want to agree with Commissioner Gregory on, we just need to begin to move forward as quickly as possible to resolve the issue. And I think it's imperative that people know that the trash issue is not something that's germane just to Clayton County. It is something that's an issue throughout the Metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia. I mean, you know, a lot of times when we're here, we just think, oh, it's just Clayton. No, it's an issue we're dealing with everywhere.
Oh, absolutely, and I agree wholeheartedly. We just got to take care of our own corner of the world, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Commissioner Davis, did you have something?
Mr. Matarco, can we get a copy of that presentation, please?
Copy of the presentation.
The one for tonight? Yes,
Correct.
sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Stanford, you have something?
Yes, sir. Chairman, one thing Commissioner asked about, Commissioner Gregory was asking about next steps. Clearly, we're looking at the transfer station being an option. And then part of the presentation tonight was to try to provide context to the board about options we should consider. So we all know from a citizen standpoint, you know, what's the lesser of the two evils. But unpacking that to figure out mandatory versus multiple haulers versus what the board feels is the most palpable, then the staff can come back and make even bigger recommendations by unpacking those respective recommendations. So one of the things we're asking the board to contemplate, when you look at those 5 options, what seems to be most appealing to you as a board, so therefore we can now answer more poignant questions to the citizens about what might be the particulars in their questions. One of the things they charged us with is that the requests of the respective citizens have looked at a multitude of options. And part of their questions back to us from a staffing standpoint is again, well, what direction are we heading down? So we can kind of narrow down the scope. We can probably provide them a little more specificity around the request. And then ultimately we can figure out the practicality of those respective requests to answer more poignant questions. And to Mr. Garber's point and the chairman's point and the whole board's point, we can educate the public on what direction we're thinking about going.
And that's dead on, Ms. Stanford. Now that each board member will receive this presentation, they can digest the information, and then we can come back together and say, okay, do we want to look at mandatory? We want to look at the county doing it? Do we want to look at, you know, there's so many different options we have to look at, because the biggest thing is how do we settle the billing part of it? So once we can all agree on that, then the rest, as far as getting a direction, should fall in place. But we also got to look at those other ways of trying to mitigate the problem by transfer stations, amnesty days, just a number of those options that Mr. Lawson had gave us. Any other questions? All right, Jeff and Josh, I appreciate y'all presentation and the information. If you would, please make sure that you get that information to the commissioners so we can digest it. And please make yourself available should we circle back around and have you here for another work session. But thank you. All right, anything else from board members? If not, let's adjourn. Everybody have a good night.